Oh, look at that. We're live. Steven.
Oh, yeah.
Live, and it is exactly 8:30, just like you predicted several hours ago.
Yeah, like you predicted, actually, but thank you.
Well, it was a joint prediction. It was well executed. It is Husker Extra Live, presented by Tom Dinsdale Hyundai of Grand Island, Parker, Sipple, the Journal Star crew. We have made our way out of the greater Lafayette, Indiana area. We're back in the greater Chicagoland area. We just watched Nebraska, or this afternoon we watched Nebraska beat Purdue 37-27. Stephen, we've got comments and questions in the chat already, but let me just start by getting your general impression of the game today.
Well, there's a lot to it. I mean, I think that you would say this was an example of Nebraska, a kind of a sort of a rare example, Parker, of all three phases contributing significantly. All three phases. I mean, obviously the passing game was on point for the most part. The special teams contributed greatly with the, setting the tone with the blocked punt, but also having a long, they had a good, nice return by Cam Taylor-Britt, right?
27 yards, yep.
Yeah. And then the defense, was pretty good. I mean, it held Purdue to -2 yards rushing. Now, Purdue's not a great running team. Well, you know what? Actually, Purdue, no, they're not a great running team. But you hold a Big Ten team, I don't care what the team is, to -2. That's pretty good.
Right.
Xander Horvath, he was coming off a day against Rutgers, Parker, where he ran 19 times for 101 yards. And they couldn't get him going today. Now, so really, they got good pressure on the quarterback. 9 penalties, but Purdue had 11 penalties.
Yep.
Pretty sloppy game.
There was a lot of penalties. 7 of them, I think, in total came on that one drive in the fourth quarter, which I thought sort of was the drive that was a microcosm of the game, right? It was Nebraska. Just the game had closed to within 7 on that sort of fluky 89-yard touchdown that Purdue hit, where Cam Taylor-Britt and Markel Dismuke ran into each other and fell down. And then instead of going 3 and out, Nebraska mounted a scoring drive to kick a field goal and go up 10. But there were 2 penalties on the kickoff, one on each team. Then Nebraska had back-to-back holding penalties. But then they got totally bailed out on a 2nd and 21 on a completely needless hit on Xavier Betts on a ball that was over his head to sort of reset the chains and get Nebraska back on track on that drive. Then there was a 15-yard penalty on Austin Allen at the end of the drive. But anyways, that was a key moment because they were able to, as Adrian Martinez said, they stayed focused, even though that was sort of a chaotic, bizarre drive. Kicked a field goal, they went back up 10. And the defense really took over from there. They held Purdue to -8 yards on Purdue's last 2 drives. So a 3 and out and a 4 and out. So, it was, like you say, I mean, it certainly wasn't perfect. There's a whole lot of, tape you can watch and find corrections and teaching points and all that. But Nebraska led by 2 scores for most of the game, or multiple scores for most of the game, and ended up winning by 10. So never going to complain about winning by 10 points on the road in the Big Ten.
Yeah, they were up 17-0, 20-3, and 34-13.
Yep. All right, let's get to it. We've got a ton of questions already in the chat. Thank you guys for that. Kansas, let's see. Quarterback questions right off the bat. Up here. Let me just give you 3 right in a row from Kansas Husker and Chris. What happened to Luke? Does he see the writing on the wall? Not sure about that, Kansas. Chris Diaz is wondering about Mackenzie Milton and if the Huskers will take a chance on him, and also how Logan Smothers is coming along. Simple?
Well, I mean, you can help answer 2 of those questions by saying Adrian Martinez in the last 2 games is 41 for 50 for 416 yards with no picks, just 1 TD, but 41 of 50 for 416 yards in 2 games is pretty good.
And 3 rushing touchdowns.
Oh, thank you. 3 rushing. Thank you. 3 rushing touchdowns. He looks, you know what? Last 2 games, it's hard to find much to complain about. We're always going to talk about the downfield passing game, right?
Yeah.
But he got some balls downfield today, not go route type balls, but not passes like that. Nothing.
Right.
I don't know. I don't think they got anything down the seam or anything like that.
They got Austin Allen on the one big one right down the middle of the field.
Oh yeah.
Monster kind of got him.
Yeah. So, but yeah. I mean, I don't think Luke's going anywhere. I don't mean that in a transfer sense. I mean, I just think, Adrian has kind of reasserted himself at that position.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's anything that Luke hasn't necessarily done. I mean, obviously Luke didn't play well against Illinois. But I think this is more about Adrian reasserting himself than Luke than their. It's more about Adrian reasserting himself than it is about. I wouldn't think Nebraska coaches are losing confidence in Luke.
I think, and this isn't to pick on Kansas Husker or anything like that, but Nebraska fans they pined to see Luke McCaffrey when it wasn't going well with Martinez, and we sort of said, like, hey, just remember he's a really young player. And then when he has suffered through the first struggle of his career, I guess you would say, against Illinois, I think it's also now important to point out, like, he's a really young player. He's a redshirt freshman. It's going to be okay with Luke McCaffrey. They have every reason to believe that he's going to be a really good player and probably a really good quarterback in his career. But he's not particularly refined as a passer right now. He made a really good throw today. The one ball he threw today was a dart for 11 yards on a third down that Nebraska needed. But yeah, I mean, Adrian Martinez is pretty clearly ahead of Luke McCaffrey just in terms of passing the ball right now. And it's showed in the way that Adrian's played the past couple of weeks.
Adrian looks pretty good running it too.
Yeah, he does. He does. Kansas Husker also says, hey, Sip, you may not remember me, but I still have the offer open to get White Sox to the team. Those long red compression deals are butt ugly.
Hey, I do. Hey, you know what? I do remember that.
There you go. Andrew says, good evening, fellas. Chris says, GBR from Ogallala. Greg, great win today. Sean, sup, gents. Matt, good evening. How's Chi-Town tonight? Yeah, Matt, O'Hare is just lovely. Let's see. Game Cave, how about that secondary today? Yeah, Sipple, that's a fair point.
Well, Cam Taylor-Britt's playing the best football of his career. He did a good job on David Bell. He and Markel Dismuke collided on that unfortunate play, where Bell went 89 yards, and that closed it to 34-27. And there was probably a lot of kind of collective anxiety in Husker Nation, quelled, of course, by the subsequent drive to which you just referred. I would say Boodle's a steady player. He's been a steady player, and I thought he played good in coverage.
Yep, he did.
The safeties played – I don't know. I think the safeties must have played pretty well. Rondale Moore had 13 catches for 78 yards, a lot of underneath stuff, though. And I thought beyond the 89-yard Bell catch and run, they did a pretty good job on him, I thought.
Yeah. You know what? Do you know what 13 catches for 78 yards means, Sipple?
I'm anxious to hear this. What does that mean?
That means you tackled well.
Yeah, I think so. I think they did absolutely tackle Rondale well. He didn't get loose, so to speak, really.
Yeah.
So I'd say it's interesting. It's an interesting discussion about the defense. Like we said, they held Purdue to -2 rushing yard. Sacks factored into that. Did a good job overall. I mean, it almost got away from them a little bit. But I'd say you would say that the back-to-back games by the defense were pretty good.
Yeah,
not much to complain about.
Nope. And the thing that was, I thought among the things that was solid for the defense today was they knew that Purdue was going to put the ball in the air a lot, and Purdue did. I mean, they threw the ball 47 times and ran it 17 or something like that. And yet Nebraska was able to get some pressure even in situations when they just rushed 4 or even 3. I think one of the sacks came in a 3-man rush. So, that ability to win, not all the time. There were certainly times when Jack Plummer had plenty of time to throw. But to be able to harass him enough to make him feel it, I think, and not have to bring 6 guys and leave Rondell Moore open or uncovered underneath or something like that was really important. And Nebraska got enough of that over the course of the game. 9 tackles for loss and 3 sacks on the day.
Parker, getting home with 4 or 3 is critical.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I think I need to emphasize that more going forward. It's gigantic, especially like you say, against a team like that is going to use a lot of wide receivers and throw the ball. Jack Plummer threw for 334 yards and 3 touchdowns, but I don't know. A lot of that's just a function of that's what they have to do because they weren't getting anything on the ground.
James says, can we just talk about how great Xavier Betts is going to be in the coming years? So excited about him. Yeah, James, Sipple and I were talking about this in the car between West Lafayette and Chicago. One of the things that's interesting is there was some consternation among fans, and it's understandable, obviously, when Marcus Fleming, transferred or left the team or whatever last weekend, and obviously Omar Manning has barely played this year and all of that. But this is why coaches say things like, we're going to coach the guys that we have here. It's because they know that they have guys that can do it in Xavier Betts, Levi Falk, obviously Wan'Dale Robinson, who had 9 catches for 114 yards today. But when you look at, so Xavier Betts and Levi Falk today had 5 catches each, nothing huge, 40 yards or so each, but 5 catches on 6 targets for Betts and 5 catches on 5 for Falk. I mean, 11 balls got thrown at those guys, and they had 10 catches. That's what you need. You just need guys to make the plays that are in front of them. Betts catch and run underneath. They don't have to be game breakers right now or every single game or anything like that. They just need to play within the offense. And they've found some guys now between those 3, Betts, Falk, and Robinson, and then Wyatt Lever caught a touchdown today. They've got a workable rotation at receiver. It's not going to necessarily blow anybody away, but they're getting to a point where they really trust those guys and a couple of those young guys like Betts to play. And then that's, as James, as you said, like that's when you can start to get excited about what you think might be next with a guy like Xavier Betts.
Yeah, Betts is a smooth operator. He is. He does look like a football player. And, you project him a little bit, right? What'd you say, Parker? Are you about 6'2", 200?
Yep.
If he, gets 6'3", 210, 215, he already looks pretty good.
Yeah.
And then you throw in the tight ends too. They get good production from those guys. Allen caught the 1 pass. Vokalek had at least how many catches did Vokalek have? At least a couple.
Yeah, let's see. I've got the stats right here, Steve.
At least a couple.
2 for 15. Austin Allen 1 for 37.
Yeah, so there's production. It's from the tight end spot, and they're going to keep getting that. Those guys are good players. So yeah, they got some things going. You don't want to go overboard with praise, but the passing game does look like there's some chemistry building, right, in the passing game. Also, having Dedrick Mills back there helps the passing game, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That threat at running back, it's really, Parker, having him back makes a big difference.
It does.
It really does. I'm not saying that he is a all Big Ten caliber back or anything like that, but he's a senior thumper. You have to pay attention to him, and that takes a little pressure off everybody.
Melissa says GBR. Greg says Go Big Red from Grand Island, Nebraska. Greg, we were making the comparison of Lafayette and Grand Island this morning yesterday when we rolled in. Andrew says it was nice seeing a team make more mistakes than us. Barely, but true. The penalty
Purdue Parker really hurt itself.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
debilitating holdings. A lot of problems up front. Now, you might credit Nebraska a little bit for that, right? They were putting pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, Dan says it's funny how well the defensive line looks and plays when the other team is held accountable for their holding. Or, Dan, maybe it's the other way around, where once you show the capability of beating the offensive line as a defensive lineman, you're more likely to get called for holding. or more likely to draw a holding call. Chicken or the egg? Chris, about time all three phases worked. Yep, they got big plays from all three. It was kind of a wild day on special teams. It wasn't all good. They blocked the punt. They had a big return. Connor
Culp blocked.
Yeah, Connor Culp continues to be really steady. He's made 12 of 13 field goals now in his time at Nebraska. Made a 49-yarder today, longest by 10 yards this season. On top of that, but then, yes, to your point, Sipple, the other way, they gave up a big kick return. They had the punt blocked, which you just cannot do. They had a 15-yard penalty on somewhere along the way. Two of them even maybe. They had a holding call and a 15-yard penalty. So that kind of stuff you can't do and expect to get away with it consistently. Fred asks, are the Huskers not answering questions on Mackenzie Milton? Well, no, Fred, they just haven't been asked at this point because Milton's a transfer player and it's the middle of a season. I mean, it's not really, now that he's available, he may get asked about, but I mean, I don't think that they're thinking about what their quarterback room is going to look like next year at this point. Greg asks, are we going to a bowl this year? Simple.
Oh, I think there's a good chance now. I mean, you're 2-4, you get to 3-4, the chances escalate. Get to 4-4, and what are we talking about? There's a bowl in Arizona. What's that bowl called?
The Guaranteed Rate Bowl.
The Guaranteed Rate Bowl would be against a Big 12 team. Now, if you want to get Nebraska fans on this little Husker Extra live deal all cranked up, think about December 26th in Arizona playing a Big 12 team like, say, Kansas State.
Sign me up for that. That'd be great.
Oh, fantastic. Would that be fun or what? How fun would that be? December 26th. December 26th at 9:15 Central. That would be the game.
9:15 p.m. Central. Eastern probably, but anyways. Evening, guys.
No, it's 10:15 Eastern. 10:15.
Oh, you did that calculation when you were looking that up today. No, thank you.
Yes.
Evening, guys. What is the latest with the Minnesota game next week? That's a good question. Husker is number one. It looks promising. Nothing's guaranteed, but Minnesota was going to sort of get back to practicing this weekend, and PJ Fleck said sort of late in the week that he was hoping that they'd be able to play. So at this point, you like the odds of that game happening. And if it doesn't happen, Nebraska could end up playing anyways, depending on what happens with Ohio State and Michigan. But for right now, I think you would say, Sipple, would you agree that it seems to be headed in the right direction, at least with Minnesota?
Absolutely. I mean, based on what PJ Fleck said on his TV show last week, which is basically what you said, I think it would be a Minnesota team short on probably a few key guys for sure. But Fleck there's no precedent for a Big Ten team missing 3 games because of its own COVID-19 problem.
Right.
Wisconsin missed 3, but two of those were because of a Wisconsin problem, and the third was because of the opponent. There's no precedent in the Big Ten for a team missing 3 games. Fleck coupled with Fleck's comments, I think what Parker you said last week was 70% chance the game will be played. I might even go a little higher than that at this point.
Yeah, I think as they've it looks like their numbers have sort of steadied out, or at least we haven't gotten an update with a big uptick. So I think it's in pretty good shape at this point. They have 47 positive cases, which is a huge number. 26 staff. That's still a lot of players, and they're going to be short most of those 21 players. But 21 players is not all that many more, if I'm remembering correctly, than like what Wisconsin had. And Wisconsin came back after 2 weeks and beat the crap out of Michigan. And clearly they're not exactly world beaters at this point. They scored 6 points today against Indiana. So Jonathan says, GBR from West Virginia. What's up? Thank you for joining us, Jonathan. James, let's talk about Tony Tuioti, most underrated coach on the staff.
Parker, you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, we were just talking about that in the car, actually, on the way back. I'm not an expert, but it looks like the defensive line has developed nicely. It looked like they took a step last year under Tony Tuioti, and it looks like they've taken another one this year. Got some guys in that group, young guys that are playing well. Casey Rogers, Ty Robinson. Stilley, obviously, he's a senior and he's a captain. He's playing the best football of his career. I think probably by quite a margin. They've got some guys up there, and Damian Daniels is as a junior and a guy who is in all likelihood going to be back next year at least. They've got some nice things working on the defensive line, and you like what that group projects out at over the future. And they also picked up a commit from a 2021 guy today in Raquan Buckley.
Say that name again, Parker.
Raquan Buckley.
Raquan Buckley. Yeah, so Rogers and Robinson. Rogers is a sophomore. Ty Robinson's a redshirt freshman. I mean, that's young. That's young guys. I mean, particularly a redshirt freshman like Robinson. Now he's just Parker. I would say those guys are established at their positions.
Yep.
And that is a great thing for Nebraska. Rogers, I think everybody knew Robinson could be a player. He's got a really high ceiling. Rogers, I like how active he is for a 290-pounder.
Yep.
He's got a lot of bounce and athleticism. He's got a lot of bounce and athleticism for somebody that big. I think Tuioti's done a good job. But as we've said, I'd say Tuioti, Barrett Ruud, and Mike Dawson, well, really the entire defensive staff is doing a pretty good job, I'd say. Or
I think
real good.
Yeah, for the level of questions that we had about the defensive front seven, I mean, you're not talking about the monsters of Midway necessarily, but it's been a nice group. It's been a nice group so far this year. And they've got some guys. It's going to depend. Some of it's going to depend on how many seniors come back next year. But really, any of those guys in the front seven, if you got any of them back, Colin Miller, Will Honus, JoJo Doman, and Ben Stilley, anybody that returns out of that group, you're talking about the makings of a pretty good unit going forward. Jeff, Adrian Martinez seems like he's stating a case to be the starter. Sipple, I seem to think that you tweeted something just like that during the game.
Oh, he's reasserted himself there. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We said the stats earlier, but I guess they're worth repeating. 41 for 50 in the last two games, 416 yards, one touchdown, no interceptions, and 3 rushing touchdowns, Parker. And you said he's completing 71% now on the season.
Yep.
And again, I mean, it's not perfect, but the last 2 games have looked good. I mean, he basically threw 1 incompletion against Iowa because the one other one was thrown away. I like his command. I mean, I think he's commanding the position well. He's making plays with his arm and his feet. That 3rd and 1 run, I know it was really well blocked. It wasn't all Adrian, but the scramble for a touchdown early, the 13-yard touchdown run was a tough run. He had to get out of the pocket. There's a lot of pressure. He ripped through some arms and really fought to get to the end zone. So, I mean, I think Adrian had last year on his mind. He took I think he felt like he hurt them last year, and he did in the first half of the Purdue game.
Yep.
The first half he played really poorly. I mean, it was one of the rare cases last year, Parker. I'm pretty light on Adrian usually. But it was one of the rare cases where you just thought, man, he's just playing like shit. Excuse my language. But I thought he came back in the second half and played pretty well. But I think he had that game on his – I'm sorry I said that, by the way. I think he had that game. Yeah, I think he had that loss here or at Purdue on his mind today.
Yeah, so do I. Good evening, gentlemen. Luke says the number of penalties that Purdue committed and the fact that Nebraska didn't turn the ball over show what Nebraska can be when they don't shoot themselves in the foot. Sure, Luke, yeah, to some degree, although Nebraska had over 100 yards of penalties themselves. And Greg also says no turnovers, a big win. In fact, Nebraska's crack SID, Keith Mann pointed out in his post-game notes, it was Nebraska's first turnover-free game since Minnesota in mid-October last year. So Nebraska had at least 1 turnover in 10 straight games before playing turnover-free today. So obviously they almost made it through the Iowa game last week before the fumble that ended the game, basically. But Yeah, it's been much. They've taken care of the ball much better as a whole over the last 2 weeks. Oh man, we got a ton of questions in here. Probably not. Well, there's no way we're gonna get through all of this. Brad Sip with the S bomb. Yeah, it's a family show, but sometimes you got to say it like it is.
Yeah, what was that all about? What was that all about?
I don't know. I saw you ramping it up. You put it in the trebuchet and you pulled it back and then you just let it rip.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I offended anybody. I'll put a cap on that. You would say I usually don't do that, right? I usually don't.
Yeah. Let's see. GBR from North Texas, Derek says. Did you guys see the news of another Florida recruit decommitting? Yes, Andrew. That was Patrick Payton, outside linebacker. I think he's a really good player. So, I mean, that's too bad for Nebraska on that front. I can't say it's particularly surprising. He's at Miami Northwestern. So he was high school teammates with Marcus Fleming and Ronald Delancey, two guys that aren't on the team anymore. And the other thing, and I shouldn't make it sound like, oh, well, he's buddies with those guys, so there's no way he was coming here. Part of it is that, he hadn't visited Lincoln ever. I mean, because of the pandemic, he committed, I think, in May or June, and he never got up here on a visit. And then the two guys that he knew here on the team are no longer on the team. And so it wasn't surprising, but he's a really good player. He's a true outside linebacker, 6'5" guy. So, yeah, it hurts. They picked one up tonight in Raquan Buckley. It'd be interesting to see how the class finishes. Going to be a little different this year, obviously, because Nebraska's still playing and is going to be playing for at least a couple more weeks. And the early signing day is on December 16th. So it's a week from Wednesday is National Signing Day. So there's going to be a lot of stuff going on in the recruiting front over the next 10 days. So we'll have a ton of that coverage too at Husker Extra. If by chance you're watching this stream and you don't subscribe to the Journal Star right now, holiday deal, you can subscribe for 5 months for $5. That'll get you all the recruiting coverage, the rest of the football season coverage into the off season, plus all the new stuff going on. Great deal. Journal Star /subscribe.
Hey, good job, Parker. 5 months, $5?
Yeah.
That's a great Christmas present.
Yeah, that would be a great Christmas. Yeah, get it. People should do that. Christmas presents for their loved ones. Journal Star subscription.
Ho, ho, ho.
Bob says, Parker, describe driving Mr. Sipple.
There's a lot of cackling.
There's a lot of cackling. We have a good time. Sipple is a fantastic passenger in the car.
What's that?
When he's not grinding chocolate chip cookies into the seat. But that wasn't me. That was before my time at the Journal Star.
Grinding chocolate chip cookies. That was so long ago.
That was like 2016, I think. So
yeah, 2016.
Let's see. That's a horrible bowl name. Yeah, the Guarantee Rate Bowl is not exactly like a sexy bowl name. Who are they going to play in 2 weeks? Scott, that's a great question. It's really hard to say, in part because there are so many teams jumbled up in that like 2 or 3 win area. The one thing that Bill Moose I think he told Mitch Sherman this last week, was that they're trying to avoid rematches for that week. So like Nebraska, if Nebraska ended up, say, 4th in the West and Penn State was 4th in the East, they would try not to play that game again since they already played this year. That being said, that makes the logical potential matchups Rutgers, Michigan State, or Maryland would seem like sort of like that. That's sort of like the field there. And we'll see if we get any information. We might get a kickoff time for the Minnesota game tonight. We'll see if we get any information about that weekend.
I'd like to see him play the Wolverines.
Maybe in Detroit, in Motor City.
That'd be really fun. Bring that on. Bring that ride on, Parker.
Let's do it. If Nebraska came to Arizona to play in a bowl game and I couldn't go because of COVID, I would cry for days, Eric said. Living in Arizona most of my life, I've only had the pleasure of seeing Nebraska Memorial once. Yeah, Eric, that would suck. I mean, it's a tough part of the bowl deal anyways. I mean, that's Nebraska fans want to travel to a bowl game, and if they make a bowl game for the first time in 4 years and fans can't go, it's just one more thing the pandemic ruined in 2020.
Stay safe. Stay safe.
Stay safe. Few players said they're not talking about leaving yet until the season's over. Yeah, Ryan, we'll probably get sort of a torrent of that kind of news. Something like in the couple weeks after the season ends, whatever that is.
I really like what Dante Williams said this week when asked about that. He said, I'm not thinking about the next phase of my life right now. I'll tell you something, Parker. I'd be annoyed with media asking me that if I were a senior. I said, why are we talking about what I'm doing next? We got 3 games left. 2 games for sure.
I think I asked a couple guys about that, like at the beginning of the season, just to see if like I was curious if anybody before the year started had decided preemptively, like I'm definitely doing this. But once the season started, I sort of thought like, there's no.
I love Deontay Williams' answer earlier this week. He literally said, I'm not really thinking about he said, I'm not thinking about the next phase of my life right now.
Yep.
Great answer.
Damien, yeah. The Mad Dinos asks, was that Damian Jackson's first playing time? No. First of all, he's a regular on special teams. He's on the number 1 kickoff unit. And then he got a little bit of run. It wasn't against Ohio State, but it was earlier in the year against either Northwestern or Penn State, maybe Northwestern. What's their record again? 2-4. Someone made a point about wide receivers, and Derek said, is the lack of a deep threat our receivers or more the quarterbacks? Yeah, Derek, it's a good question. My hunch is that it's maybe a little bit more receivers at this point, but I don't. It's hard to say. It's usually more than one thing on that front. Couple more, and then we'll get out of here. Does he sing? Oh yeah, Sipple for sure sings in the car.
No, I don't. Parker, don't say that because I do. No, I never sing.
He actually doesn't. He doesn't sing. I sing in the car occasionally. Yeah. You heard it here first. Nebraska will win the Big Ten West. Adam, I think Northwestern has that locked up. But.
I think they're mathematically eliminated.
Nebraska and Ohio State and Indianapolis, that'd be a turn of events. Rodrigo, any chance to recruit Terrence Lewis? Probably not. Another Miami Northwestern guy, as it were. Probably not. I think that ship has sailed, so to speak. Jonathan, did Diaco make a trophy this year? No, but man, he was windmilling balls to the linebackers again before the game. I've missed that. I hadn't seen that since 2017. Where's the polar bear? Bradley says, have not heard anything on him yet. You know, that's life as a freshman lineman in the Big Ten, man. You get to the program, and they just, for a couple of years, they just have you eat and lift. That's all you do. We have not seen, I mean, Turner Corcoran on the offensive line has gotten a little bit of playing time as a true freshman, but neither Nash Hutmacher suited up for 1 or 2 games earlier in the season, didn't play, and we have not seen Marquise Black, the other freshman defensive lineman, at all. So
I got a question, Parker.
Yeah.
Is Corcoran on the travel roster?
Oh, yeah. Yep. He is. He's the number 2 left tackle.
So he's been on the travel roster all year.
He has been, yeah. He's suited up for every game. He's been on the travel roster every game. And he played against Ohio State and I think one other game too. Let's see if Nebraska. Oh, yeah, that was about that crossover weekend. Man, would love to cross over against the Spartans and absolutely destroy a Mel Tucker team. That would be interesting. They could also play that one. They could also play that one in Detroit Rock City. Let's go out and beat Minnesota, Mark says. Well, that's next on the schedule. You guys rock. Oh, thanks, Kevin. That's nice of you.
Nebraska will have a great chance to beat Minnesota because Minnesota's defense is suspect. But you better, the defense has got to keep playing well.
All right, well, let's find one more. No, Ativa Clements. We'll do 2 more. Brendan, no, he's on the travel roster. He plays special teams too. He's on the kick unit. So yeah. Alabama has 45 points and 400 yards in the first half against LSU. Will Bo make it through the season? It's been rough. And
I don't think they're gonna. I don't think they'll fire him. They owe him $7 million.
That's a lot. The defense is such a head scratcher. Seem like good individual players, but suffer as a group. Derek, I mean, they played pretty well. Not great. I mean, not if you're comparing them to the great defenses of program history, but I mean, they played okay the last couple of weeks for sure. And overall the season, I mean, Illinois was really bad, obviously, but overall it hasn't been too bad. I know that a lot of what a ringing endorsement. It hasn't been too bad, but all right, last one. Nebraska's offensive line didn't seem to create too much running room today. Are there any players on the roster with a chance to develop into a starter by next season? Well, Matt just mentioned one in Turner Corcoran who would be in line probably to take over for Brendan Hymas when Hymas goes off to the NFL. And yeah, there are others. They really like Brant Banks, who's a redshirt freshman this year. Obviously, I mean, you're not talking about stepping in as a new starter next year, but all three of Ethan Piper and Bryce Bennett in particular, and then Cam Jurgens, you want to see each of them take a big step forward, from this year to next year, obviously. So they've got three young guys in the starting lineup already, and at least two more that they really like in Corcoran and Banks. Should we call it there, Sipple?
That sounds good.
All right, there you go. Thank you so much, everybody, for jumping in. Sorry we couldn't get to everybody. There's a ton of questions and comments in here. So we will be back to answer as many of them as we can. You can always join us after games on Husker Extra Live. We also are typically on Thursdays at 5:30. Sometimes there's a little bit less traffic there. So come join us then. Get your questions in. We'll get to as many as we can. Husker Extra Live, as always, presented by Tom Dinsdale Hyundai of Grand Island. And I'm serious about subscribing. journalstar.com/subscribe. We've got so much stuff from the game at huskerextra.com. We'll have more even, I think, still tonight, tomorrow, and obviously on into next week as Nebraska gets ready for Minnesota. They beat Purdue today, 37-27.